Way back, long before the Great Flood, there was this moment. A moment when the very fabric of reality just tore apart. Today, we're going to decode one of the most powerful and honestly most controversial ancient texts ever written. We're talking about the Book of Enoch and its story of a cosmic rebellion that totally changed the ancient world.
Yeah, that one line, it really captures the whole essence of the story, doesn't it? It's all about a cosmic transgression. A deliberate violation of divine order that was about to unleash absolute chaos on the world. And look, this isn't just some simple myth. No way. This is the core idea, the whole foundation of a book that profoundly shaped how ancient people saw their world.
So, what is the Book of Enoch exactly? Well, it's this ancient Jewish apocalyptic text. Some parts of the Book of Enoch are over 2,200 years old, dating back to the 3rd century BCE. You can think of it as this collection of visions and prophecies. But what really makes it famous is its incredibly detailed and, frankly, explosive account of a rebellion in the heavens that literally spilled over onto Earth. Okay, so to really get the story, we first have to appreciate its history. Because you gotta understand, this wasn't some obscure, forgotten fairy tale. Not at all. This was a hugely significant text with let's just say, a fascinating and pretty controversial past.
And the influence of this book, it's just undeniable. They found pieces of it with the Dead Sea Scrolls, which proves it was a big deal to ancient Jewish communities. And get this, it's actually quoted, word for word, in the New Testament book of Jude. Plus, a lot of the early church fathers referenced it. In fact, for the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, it's still considered inspired scripture to this very day. Wow.
All right, so all of that brings us right to the core of the book, the story of this heavenly rebellion. And it all kicks off with a specific group of angels and a pact they made on a mountaintop that was about to change the course of history forever. So, according to Enoch, the story starts with these angels called the Watchers. Their job was pretty simple, really. Just watch over humanity, be guardians, observers, from a distance. They were supposed to be witnesses to creation, not participants. But, as you can probably guess, that was all about to change. 200. That's the number the book gives us. 200 of these watchers, with their leader, an angel named Semyaza, basically decided to abandon their post. They all gathered on Mount Hermon and swore this binding oath to see their forbidden plan through, together. And make no mistake, this wasn't an accident. This was a full-blown conspiracy. So what was this forbidden plan? Well, they came down to Earth, they took human wives for themselves, and they started teaching humanity all this forbidden knowledge. We're talking stuff like how to make weapons, which obviously led to a ton of violence. Then there were things like cosmetics, which fostered vanity, and also occult secrets, enchantments, astrology, things that turned people away from God and toward these hidden powers. It was like a direct injection of corrupting knowledge right into the heart of humanity. And this unholy mix of heaven and earth, it had a truly monstrous consequence. We're talking about the birth of a whole new race of beings that would push the entire world right to the brink of total destruction. These offspring, they were called the Nephilim. Now you might have heard of them, they get a brief mention in Genesis chapter 6, but oh man, the Book of Enoch gives you the whole gruesome backstory. They were giants, a hybrid race, not quite divine, not quite human, and they were born with this absolutely insatiable, violent hunger. And their violence, it just spiraled completely out of control. It was this horrifying escalation. First, they just consumed everything. All the food, all the animals, all of humanity's resources. When that ran out, they turned on humanity itself. And when that wasn't enough, they started devouring each other. The corruption got so bad, Enoch says the earth itself literally cried out to heaven for help. So, as the cries from this tormented world finally reached the heavens, a response was put into motion. And listen, this wasn't going to be some chaotic act of revenge. No, this was a precise, orderly plan to restore all of creation.
You know how the book of Genesis just says the world before the flood was filled with violence, but it's kind of vague on the details? Well, this is where the book of Enoch comes in and gives us the why. It basically says, hey, this wasn't just your average human wickedness. No, this was the direct result of that cosmic rebellion and the absolutely ravenous destruction caused by the Nephilim.
So God dispatches 4 of his archangels, each with a very specific mission. You've got Michael, who's sent to bind the ringleaders of the Watchers. Then there's Gabriel, whose job is to basically turn the Nephilim against each other so they destroy themselves. Raphael has to bind the main corrupting angel, Azazel, and cast him into darkness. And finally, Uriel is sent to warn Noah about the massive flood that's coming to cleanse the earth. Talk about a coordinated divine response.
And this completely reframes the whole story of the Great Flood, right? In Enoch's telling, it's not just about punishment. It's more like an act of cosmic surgery. Yeah, it's painful, but it was absolutely necessary to cleanse and save creation from a corruption that was so deep, humanity had zero hope of surviving it on its own. But even with the Watchers all bound up and the bodies of the Nephilim washed away by the flood, the story, well, it doesn't end there. Not even close. The corruption left behind a kind of spiritual scar on the world. And here's where Enoch gives this really fascinating explanation to the origin of what we might call evil spirits or demons. He claims that when the giant Nephilim were killed, their spirits, which were this unnatural hybrid, had nowhere to go. Think about it. They weren't humans, so they couldn't just pass on. They weren't angels, so they couldn't go back to heaven. So they were just left behind, stuck roaming the earth as these disembodied evil forces.
And this is such a crucial point to understand. Even though most people don't accept it as scripture today, this ideal was a huge part of the worldview for so many ancient Jews and early Christians. I mean, it gave them a really clear answer to that nagging question, where does all this spiritual evil actually come from?
So, okay, after all the giants and the fallen angels and the cosmic floods, what is this book really trying to tell us? What's the core message here that has stuck around for thousands of years? Well, the takeaways from Enoch are pretty profound, and honestly, they're timeless. First, that God is ultimately sovereign over everything. Second, that rebellion against the divine order has some seriously severe consequences. It also teaches that boundaries are there for a reason, for protection, and when you break them, you unleash chaos. And finally, maybe most importantly, that divine judgment isn't just about anger, it's about restoring balance and righteousness. And that really leaves us with a critical question that this book forces you to think about. What does happen when created beings step outside of God's intended order? The story of the Watchers is one heck of a dramatic answer, isn't it? It suggests that any time a created being, whether it's an angel or a human, steps out of line, the result is always corruption and suffering. And then there's this question, which is maybe even more relevant for us today. What happens when knowledge is used for corruption instead of for wisdom? I mean, the Watchers brought knowledge, right? But it was totally separated from wisdom, from morality. It was just power without purpose, and it led directly to humanity's near destruction. That is a powerful, powerful warning about the nature of progress, isn't it? But at the end of the day, for all its darkness and chaos, the Book of Enoch's ultimate message is really one of hope. It paints this picture of a universe where, yeah, rebellion can cause a mess for a while, but divine order will always have the final word. It's this powerful reminder that, in this worldview, God always restores what rebellion destroys.
Thanks for watching. Reality X Decoded isn't official teaching. We simply explore and aim to stay as accurate as possible. If anything seems off or you have questions, comment below and let us know what to decode next. Don't forget to subscribe.